Do you want to give them a few minutes, or it's 5, or you just want to start? Just start? Okay.
Okay. So we're ready? Okay. So we will now call to order the Tuesday, July 15, 2025 meeting of the Historic Preservation Committee. Roll call.
Committee Member Heckman,
Present.
Chair Rivera,
Present.
Committee Member Knox.
Present.
Let the record show that Committee Member, or Vice Chair Hunter Copper, and Committee Member Evans are absent.
Okay. Confirmation of the agenda.
There are no changes to the agenda.
Excellent. Okay. Then we will go to public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items not appearing on the regular agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the Historic Preservation Committee may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The chair may also request a brief response from staff for questions raised during public comment, or may request a matter to be agendized for a future meeting. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment at this time?
We have no one in the audience wishing to speak, Chair.
Okay. It's for the camera, you know. Okay, we will close public comments. Approval of minutes for May 20th, 2025.
Let the record show Committee Member, Vice Chair Dr. Hunter Copper has arrived. Apologies, Chair.
Okay. Are there any requests to speak on this item from the public?
Do we have anyone in the audience wishing to speak? We have no one wishing to speak, Chair.
Okay, very good. We will close that item and move on to new business.
Oh, we need to do the approval for that, Chair.
Oh, okay.
Apologies. So
I motion to approve the minutes.
Let the record show a motion was made by Committee Member Knox, seconded by Committee Member Heckman. Motion passes.
Very good. Item 3, new business. Item 3A, the 2025 work plan priorities, establish work plan priorities and next steps.
Good evening, committee members. Hope you're doing well this evening. We have a brief presentation. We'll give you a little bit of an update this evening, and welcome to our new member. So we'll give you a little bit of an update and some background, because some of this material will be new for those of you who either weren't at the last meeting of the Historic Preservation Committee, and then I'll give you an update as on council's discussion. So tonight for your consideration are some priorities. They're setting your priorities in the work plan. This discussion is to dive a little bit deeper into this work plan. To start with a brief update. So at the May meeting, the work plan was presented to the committee and accepted by the committee. Questions were raised at that time whether the work plan really aligned with the intended role of the Historic Preservation Committee or not. So at the June study session, City Council was invited to weigh in on the role. Should the role be very literal in its extent to of how the Historic Preservation Committee worked, or should it be more broadened to include some of the items They were given a copy of the work plan and allowed to review the work plan, and each of them weighed in on it individually and gave guidance to staff. What they said was that they supported the item in the work plan, the items that are in the work plan, and they supported the broader role of the Historic Preservation Committee, including outreach and education. They were-
Cynthia, would you move your
Certainly.
microphone closer? Thank you.
Is this better?
That's
Okay.
better.
Sometimes I hear my echo, and I apologize. I try to stand back so I'm not screaming. So they also, in that meeting, they did not support or withheld their support for the notion of any sort of designations that don't have full property owner approval. I know that we've talked previously about districts or designating districts, and we don't currently have that allowance in the code, but they would not support something that didn't have 100% property owner approval. So I think that might be a little bit premature for us to discuss because we don't have anyone necessarily, coming to the office looking to designate a district. But what this does is it really underscores a larger opportunity for the Historic Preservation Board to build awareness of preservation, meaning to tell the story of why preservation is important, why it matters, and why it matters at the local level. So what we'll do in the next slide is talk a little bit about how this integrates more direction of preservation work on the next slide. So the first question on here, preservation, we do that. So many people don't even know that we have a preservation ordinance in the city, Cathedral City. When I tell people that this is what I do here, they said, you have preservation at Cathedral City? Yes, we absolutely do. So one of the things is to make sure that people are even aware that we have a preservation ordinance. In addition, many people don't even understand the meaning and the intent of preservation and how it's relevant to them or to the city. For people to feel motivated to take action on an event, an action is typically triggered by some type of passion or an emotional response, a spark, an event, hearing a story, seeing a picture, something that grabs their attention and makes them want to take action. Creating a shared awareness leads to cohesion around a community idea or a set of values, so it creates community buy-in. These combined smaller steps then lead to build more momentum. And if this were Letterman's top 10, the last item is that cities that have a strong preservation program often start here with this community outreach and engagement. So again, some of this will be review. We talked about this before. This is actually directly lifted out of one of the previous presentations that I gave on what a work plan does and why it's important. So these are some of those reasons. Again, it identifies the goals of the city, what's important to us. We get to set those goals and say what's important to us. It sets the priorities. That's something that we're looking at doing tonight, right? We've got 6 items in that work plan. What do we want to do first? We have limited resources. We can't do everything all at once. How do we pick the things that are most important that we can mobilize resources to, get them done, get some wins behind us, report on it, get some money, move forward. It also helps guide decision-making, manage your time, again, examining what resources are needed. It demonstrates commitment for an activity and builds support around that and helps boards work together and collaborate across many boards. You will see in Eric's presentation that comes after this, you'll see collaboration across many different realms, if you will: culture, heritage, art, preservation, other aspects of what's important to the city and how those things all tie together. These are all things that, when taken separately, there's a Historic Preservation Board, there's a Public Arts, but when we put them together, there's a lot of opportunity for overlap. And then the final thing, and I always say this, is measure your success and celebrate it. So now we'll dive into those work plan goals and projects. What I did here is I put together a summary of all of these 6 items that are in that work plan. In your staff report, these are listed out. In that staff report, you'll also see challenges and opportunities with each of those items, just for a little bit of context. It's not meant to be an exhaustive list of anything, but it is meant to sort of touch on some of the things that are, which I've identified are going to be a little bit harder, just to help you all frame this up in an easier way and start thinking about what you want to do first. I did want to point out that the work plan that you have in your packet does have some amendments made to it, as I mentioned to begin with. One of those amendments was to the very first item, and that was changing the nature of the first item, process for designating historic neighborhoods. It did say districts. I did change that to neighborhoods, even though it's not a formal designation. It would be act as more of a recognition based on what we heard from City Council. So to talk about these a little bit in more depth, one of the other items was to combine two of the items together, and I think I captured that accurately, but if I did not, please let me know. That was the asset list and the recognition of resources that we have. It would be a less formal recognition, not a designation. Let's see. So this is the first item. I changed the order in here because I put the opportunity before the challenge, but this reflects what is in the staff report that you have in front of you. So where this also may more likely align under goal 3, which is the recognition of city assets and resources. So I'm just giving an overview, and then after this we'll have a discussion and you all can tell me what you'd like to see maybe come up first as a priority. The second item is the oral histories. Again, I'm not going to read all this. This was in the staff report. The third item is that development of historic recognition process and city asset list. This one I am going to dig a little bit deeper into, and I don't want to take any wind out of Eric's sails because, as I mentioned, he has a presentation and a list of resources that he's put together, and it's a terrific list. But what I did is I peeked at that list, and I took a few of those things out of there because I thought that would be a great starting point for your work if you wanted to look at doing something in this goal 3, goal 1 combination of those two goals. If you wanted to do something there, we have a potential foundation for that. So I'm going to take a little takeoff from that. So here are some of those assets out of Eric's list. And again, he'll give his presentation. I want to take any steam from his work. But here are some of the items that were in his asset list. So we've got some notable figures in the city that are buried in our memorial park here. We have 2 memorial parks. They're not necessarily related, but we have a lot of figures who have been buried in either of those 2 parks. We do have some notable structures, and these are also recognized in the Kaplan-Cheng Kaplan report as potential assets. I know some of them have been demolished, but these are still standing. So the first thing is the St. Louis Catholic Church. Whether it's significant on its own, it is associated with a notable figure who didn't actually build it himself. I know that flies around on the internet, but it's not true. The Willard Price Home. Let me give you a little picture here. So the Willard Price Home at 68500 San Jacinto Road. These are just pictures off of Google Maps. These aren't pictures that I did any field investigation, but I wanted to give you an idea of the types of assets that we had that are already identified. We also have the Adobe Home. There was no good street view because this one is surrounded by hedges on all sides. The Val Samuelson Home. This is an older picture. There's another photograph. This is actually enclosed. It's gated all the way around, and I think they've added a swimming pool to it. This is a gem I did not realize we had in this community. It's the Cree House. I haven't verified this, but as far as I understand, it was designed by Albert Fry. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the Catholic Church, which is in Cathedral Cove. There are other assets on that list, such as Cathedral Cove in general as a neighborhood. There are also notable figures in our local history. Of course, we have the Agnes Pelton House, which is our sole designation in the city. So we do have something to build on. What can happen from this is building some recognition for the assets that we have without having to constrain them in any way. They never have to get a certificate of appropriateness for any of these if we recognize them, but it does raise the awareness of what we have in this community. So back into the work plan. Goal 4 was that public outreach and communications. That starts, where this starts is with identifying what do you want to educate and outreach on. Identifying what your assets are, identifying the message that you want to get out there. We can find a place to put this. We just need to know what that content is. Content creation can be difficult. Start with what you have and what you know and then build from there. And then the 5th item is the walking tours, routes, and signage. Again, you have some known resources in your community. You might want to wrap those in. You might want to identify additional ones. That was, of course, my little presentation is not meant to be exhaustive, but it just touches on some of these assets and resources that we have in the city. And then the last item, and I'll give you a brief, pardon me, I must have taken it out. But the last item that's in here, item number 6, is the centennial celebration in August. That's something that is coming up very quickly. It will be here next month, believe it or not. We've been working on this for a long time. And what I propose to do is to actually pull together just a brief couple of screening evenings at the Mary Pickford Theater or another facility where we would watch documentaries or even feature films and have a little discussion around the significance or the relationship or the association that they have with Cathedral City, whether it be the architecture, the setting, being Coachella Valley, a notable figure, what have you. And I'm still working on that. I have a meeting with our communications and events folks tomorrow to see if we can move that along. So that's the update on that. Sorry I didn't include it in your presentation. But anyway, we can go back to any of these slides. I'm here to take comments, questions, direction, answer anything you might have a concern over. Thank you.
Committee members, any questions or comments?
Is the city council going to rewrite our instructions? That was my request at the last meeting. What we were designated to do, I thought that you guys were going to discuss that with the city council and determine if we are empowered or told to do what you're asking. That's my question.
So the City Council did have that discussion, and they provided direction to staff and to the Historic Preservation Committee that is supportive of the expanded work plan that was discussed at the last Historic Preservation meeting. There is not a need to amend the municipal code. The mission, the direction of the Historic Preservation Committee, the actions that are proposed in the work plan are consistent with the language that speaks to education, awareness, creating interest in historic preservation that's currently within the charge for the Historic Preservation Committee.
No, it isn't. No, I'm sorry.
We have direction. We have direction from City Council.
Okay. So basically, we're going to not focus on applications for historic preservation structures.
If there is an application for historic designation,
How can there be an application when we haven't designed one yet for these events? I'm just confused at this
there
point.
is a structure. There is an ordinance that guides the process to designate a historic site in Cathedral City. Yes, that exists, and if we were to receive an application similar to the one we received for the Agnes Pelton Home and Studio, we would process that in accord with the language that's in the code.
But John and I have both told you that the application that we devised was not completed, and I don't see any recognition of that. And we talked about other types of applications, landmarks, which Cynthia has mentioned. We don't have an application for that. We don't have the basic application which everything else depends on. So I'm confused about why we're talking about walking tours. I mean, I understand the usefulness and how we get the public interested in it, but I'm still confused about how you can do these other things on the work plan without the basics that the ordinance says we're supposed to be doing.
So with respect to historic districts, I think that's a good example here. Clearly, the ordinance does not contemplate the designation of a historic district, and there have been discussions in prior Historic Preservation Committee meetings about the need to do that, and that is in your work plan. And I think we did hear some feedback from council that they would not support an involuntary designation, and Cynthia in her comments tonight has addressed that. So historic districts, if that is an interest area for the Historic Preservation Committee, I think that is an example where there would need to be an amendment to the municipal code to support the designation of a historic district in the way that council has directed, where that is still voluntary. So there still may be amendments, there still may be need for process to support some of these ideas, but I think to the items that staff has identified tonight, that is consistent with the direction of council, the Historic Preservation Committee, in identifying these items to add to the work plan. This is intended to be a fluid document. If there are other items that the committee wishes to add to the work plan, this is your work plan. This is your committee, and we are responsive to that.
Look, I'm going to give my bona fides here. I was in the group that made the rules and regulations for the National Historic Preservation Act. And I'm coming from rules and regulations for historic properties, which we have not defined. And I hear Cynthia describing something that is a recognition that would not come under the National Historic Preservation Act. I know that's a federal act. We also have almost identical regulations from the state. And then we are going to ignore all of that and just say, this is an area of the city that we want to designate as important to us.
May I respond to that? I think to your point, you are certainly you're correct. There is a national, federal recognition, and there's a state recognition, and they're very similar. Then there's a local recognition. We do have a local recognition that is ensconced in Title VIII, which is part of the municipal code. That's the rules and regulations that govern historic preservation for this city. And as Director noted, that we don't have a way to designate a district, but we do have a way to designate an individual structure or site.
Who's decided that?
I'm sorry?
You did. This committee did. This committee
Yes.
created an application. They defined what a
I've
historic
told
structure.
you
Excuse me.
over and over.
I'm talking. Please don't interrupt me. This committee spent several meetings creating an application in 2022 and 2023. You revised it again in 2024. There's a very clear, on the city website, there's a very clear definition of what the historic structures are and how to apply for them. That work has been done.
We were here, John and I, since the beginning of this. I'm telling you, I have told you almost every meeting that we did not finish that application. We did a quick and dirty application to get the one historic structure designated.
And that was 2023, and then you revised it again in 2024.
No, we did not.
So what was the work done in 2024? What did you do in those meetings?
We almost didn't have meetings. That was during COVID.
Yeah.
In 2024, that was during COVID?
23 and 24 both. We were having very sporadic meetings.
So,
And then this work plan came up and took over. And I'm just wondering why
I don't know if it helps to
Why I'm
perhaps
here.
to present a little bit of history. So in 2024, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there were 4 meetings that were held. The application was discussed and the paper application was revised by this committee in 2024. There was further discussion about it, and the staff at the time said, you know what, we have gone to EnerGov, or the customer service portal, which circumvents, or for lack of a better term, there is no paper application that comes along with that. So all applications are submitted online at the charge of the Historic Preservation Board. The contents of the application have not changed. So how you review them and the criteria by which you review them has not changed. That was not part of the charge of the board as we understood it in 2024. I was here for those meetings, I do believe. But we circumvented or did not follow through on any of that, not to any disrespect to Dr. Hunter Copper, but because there was no longer a need to revise a paper application. So, and partly because there has not been any conversation with any property owner, past or former, to bring a designation forward. So we took it upon ourselves to say, well, there is energy, and we wanted to take the opportunity to recognize the energy of the board in doing something that maybe we would be able to accomplish in a few meetings, such as a recognition. It's an unofficial recognition. It's not it doesn't fall under, it's not looking for state recognition, it's not looking for tax credits, it's not a precursor to any sort of federal designation. It's really just a locally recognized structure or site. That's all we're proposing. So there's a distinction there, and I recognize that, and I want to make sure that that is absolutely clear.
I want to circle back to the application, because to give you a little history of that, it was always a work in progress, and there was a lot of back and forth. And to be very candid about it, the previous planning director really had no interest in the committee. He was stuck with it. He was assigned the task of taking charge of the committee. And so the application that was put together was kind of a mashup of other city applications with some alteration, and it's still not a good application. However, the timing of the Agnes Pelton House, if we hadn't have acted when we did and used the application that we did, it wouldn't have happened. And I take really a lot of the blame for that, because I was the one that made the argument that Mr. Palladino has, in good effort, proceeded with the application that was given to him by city officials. And it seemed wrong at the time to deny his application for that reason, to make him, to stall out the process any further. So we moved forward using that application, because that was what we had, with the intention that we would revisit the application and make it into what it needs to be.
So if I can interject here for a moment, I do want to recognize that there were efforts made in 2024 to revise the application. It was split into two. 2024, there were discussions on demolitions and how demolitions were different than the designation of a historic site or a certificate of appropriateness. And there were changes made to the application form to separate those Perhaps there are some additional modifications that need to be made still, but there were changes made in conjunction with the committee July 2024 to create 2 separate applications. Ms. Schultz is correct that the paper applications are no longer in use. We have migrated over to EnerGov. Now, with that said, if there are content requirements, submittal requirements that this committee would still like to direct, we have the opportunity to make those changes. It would be my suggestion, perhaps, that a subcommittee, a smaller working group of the Historic Preservation Committee, it would need to be 2 members, could meet with staff to continue to make those changes. In review of the meetings over the last few years, this has been a significant point of discussion. There have been many committee meetings dedicated to the review of the application. I'd like to suggest the subcommittee in the sense that maybe it is a more direct way for us to get to a point of finalization on that, where it is not the sole focus of the Historic Preservation Committee. We do have a full committee now. This is not something the committee has enjoyed for some time. And, it's not just a matter of establishing a quorum, but it's a matter of injecting ideas and being responsive to those ideas. And I think the work plan that the committee has developed, prepared, discussed at the last meeting, and continues to discuss, is a way for the committee to consider ideas beyond the content of the application. And we want to be responsive, respectful to the committee and its desires. If that is a desire of the committee, let's find a way to get it done. But I would like to be supportive of those that have ideas on the work plan and that would like to consider other ideas as well.
Well, I hate to simplify it in such a way, but, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I like your suggestion of maybe we can break off a couple of committee members that could be tasked with that. I would be more than happy to be one of those, and perhaps.
I appreciate that, and it's not to say that the committee can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but I'd like to find a way to move this beyond a conflict point, because I think this has been a conflict point, and I don't think staff means it to be. We want to find a way to move the committee forward.
Well, one of the benefits of having a better formed application, there is not a one-size-fits-all application. And if we model it, the initial draft of that application was modeled after the Department of Interior's application. Obviously, that's a bit of an overkill for a local historic board such as ours, but there were some elements of it that you could perhaps designate the site, not the structure, or the structure, not the site, or elements of the site, or objects within the site, or solely based on historic individual who resided or owned the property. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to come up with the designation, and that is something that is not currently in the application that we have now, that flexibility. And where we're looking for trying to target or identify potential applications, having that flexibility, I think, would be helpful, very helpful. So I think it would be a worthy endeavor to continue working with the application. And continuing, of course, with the program.
So should we make a motion to add the application to the work plan as one of the goals that we're working on and designate a subcommittee for that purpose?
Perhaps designating a subcommittee to work on the application as a separate item. Yeah. I would suggest keeping the work plan as a full board or full committee activity.
Would the subcommittee then bring it back to the full committee for approval, though? Wouldn't that
Yes.
be, so it would
I think that's the intent. I think the intent there is, a subcommittee may be more nimble. You may be able to have more direct conversations on what needs to be in the application, what needs to be in that workflow process. If there are changes that are needed to the municipal code to support that, that subcommittee is going to be able to be more responsive, and let's get that brought back to the larger committee for resolution and action.
So do we need a motion to create a subcommittee?
Yes.
Okay. I move to create a subcommittee on the application.
I'll make a second.
Point of order, do they need to designate members?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that part of the motion?
I think so, yes.
So should we cancel this?
Amend it. I
Okay.
think you can amend it, right?
Okay, so is there a motion to amend?
I think we can just move forward with a motion and like a nomination, right? Do they need to be two separate ones?
It can be a friendly amendment. Chair Rivera, I think you volunteered to be on the
Yeah, I
subcommittee.
would be more than happy to do it.
Would you like to volunteer as well?
Who would be the second member on that board?
I did.
The question is, do you want to be on this subcommittee to review the application?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there you go. The friendly amendment noted.
So moved.
Let the record show a motion was made by Vice Chair Hunter Copper, seconded by Chair Rivera, to form a subcommittee nominating Chair Rivera and Vice Chair as members.
I think the
Motion
motion was
passes.
made by Knox.
What?
The motion was made by Knox.
It got remade.
Oh,
It got remade, yeah, so
Okay.
it's Vice Chair.
That's okay.
I thought it got amended, sorry. All right.
So continuing the workplace or the work plan discussion, on the topic of oral histories, that was something that I proposed back in March when we were first discussing this as a celebration of our 100th anniversary since the first recording of Cathedral City as a place name. It's not something, or I just wanted to open that up to discussion if that's something that the committee wants to pursue. I don't, it seems to be a very large and nebulous process that might be beyond the scope of this committee.
Can I add some detail to that? I'm glad someone brought something up, and then we can talk about that. So for discussion, yes, it would be beyond the scope of the committee as it sits today. You would probably need to dedicate resources. That's part of why we have the work plan, is to sort of visualize what kind of resources we're talking about. Are we talking about staff time? Are we talking about professional content creation? A list of people that we want to interview and have those conversations with. So there are a lot of things that need to sort of be worked out before you would take the action to actually do the interviews and have those recorded. And whether those get recorded locally, you know, meaning by this crew who you have available to you at low cost or no cost, or whether you have those done professionally. You might do them as videos, you might do them as just oral recordings. Either way that you do them, you just have to make those decisions and then decide if you want to somehow figure out a way to get budget for that and what that ask would look like. But I think you're touching on some key points, is that this is something the board is, and other members of the board have expressed interest in as well. But in order to start this, what are the resources that are needed? What do we need to mobilize? What's the first thing we need to do in order to make this happen? Because at some point you do want to have, and then also having a place to host them. Whether it be, you know, there's some cities who have done podcasts. That's pretty much an easy place to host. And some places have done YouTube, but some places have hosted them on dedicated websites, which is a little bit different scope. So I just want to throw all that out there for things that you all can think about.
I have two more points, but I don't want to dominate the conversation if anyone else has anything.
Yeah, I want to add to that, actually add to your comments. Just throwing out a potential idea. Mary Pickford Theater you mentioned a podcast, but maybe a short video, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, something that could be included at the Pickford Theater. They kind of slide it in with previews and such, highlighting Cathedral City's past, and just it would get it out there. Kind of a captive audience waiting for their movie to start. Get a little history.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm going to repeat myself. But one of the things, and I'm glad that these gentlemen are here as well, because I've mentioned this a couple times. So I was talking about the celebration in August, which I've reached out to the Mary Pickford Theater and asked them if we can help them with some sort of promotion or promotional material, or how we might be able to help sort of make a quid pro quo. I hate to use that phrase, but how can we help them to help us make this partnership work? I did approach some of Justin's staff and ask if they would be willing to put together a short 5 to 10 minute clip with content that we've put together, meaning mostly me and other staff, to put together historic content and text and everything, so their lift is less. There's some tremendous talent on that team, and I think we've got that idea in place. If not for the Mary Pickford, maybe for our Plan B pivot, if we go forward with a different plan for August. But in any case, we would have that recorded material. It would be 5 to 10 minutes. If you'd like to be, I'm going to invite you, if you want to be on a subcommittee to review that, or help staff review that, I'd be happy to take anyone's expertise off of the board to review that material before it gets published.
Aries is a playwright. He could write the script for you.
I think you've been volunteered.
Okay, I'll send you my fees.
We have no budget.
Another thing that I don't see on this list that I know that we've discussed, and I know it was part of City Council's conversation during the study session last week, are the assets held by the Historical Society. That was an item that made it onto the 5-year plan. I have spoken to the Historical Society about those assets. They do exist. They are safe right now, but they would like to see a permanent home for them. So I wonder if that's something that we can add to our discussion, or if that fits under something that we currently have here, or if that's its own separate kind of item.
I was looking at Andy to answer that one, but I think that the city has approached the Historical Society about that previously, because it is something that is in the city's strategic plan, and I'm not sure where that ended up going, but...
That's a discussion we can reopen. It is in the strategic plan. Our initial outreach with the Historical Society was not productive, but that is a discussion that we can continue. We've had more recent outreach and communication with the Historical Society. There may be value in reopening it.
Yeah, the conversation that I had with one of the parties there was very interested in participating in something. There are some nuances to work out, but there is a desire there.
And that would be good if we could bridge that gap, because I know it's been brought up multiple times. So, and I only say that I somewhat hesitate when working on a plan to try to include an outside entity that we have little to no control over. It's sort of like controlling a coalition or an advocacy group, because they have their own, but we can certainly include outreach to them, communication. If it's been productive to work with them one-on-one, maybe that's an avenue that we want to continue to pursue until we can get something a little bit maybe more formalized.
I was going to go in a different direction, so if you want to...
I'm at the end of that point, yeah.
Okay. This is more of a curiosity question, since I'm just coming on board. First question is, do we currently have a one-stop shop for our history, like on a website or Facebook, or that would be my first question, because I'm thinking if we did, we could tie all of these projects into that to start to broadcast out to the community. And then my second question is there anything on the work plan out of the projects that we feel are the easiest actionable that would enable us to start getting something going?
Well, that was my presentation right there in a nutshell.
Okay.
And to your first question about sort of a centralized platform, really, there's a few fragmented places. There's Historical Society, they host information on their website. The city actually has some on our website, and we also link to the Historical Society. So I think there's a little bit of difference, and that's why I kind of joked earlier that Frank Sinatra didn't actually build the church, but you'll find in different places that he did, which is, misinformation. But it would be nice to have a centralized location for that. When I speak with our communications and events people tomorrow, that is part of their work. They also work on our website and see if there is a place that we might broaden or expand that presence. The charge with that is, I think to Member Knox's point, is that we don't want to overshadow what the Historical Society has done and what they've put out there, so it's good to sort of have parallel pieces that run in tandem.
I would just add to that, there's a great book by Bob Hillary, Cathedral City, The Early Years, which is founding through 1981. And I want to say he was mayor at some point. I don't know if that's correct, but he grew up here in the 40s, I believe. So he was a longtime influential early member of the city, and he wrote a really great, very short book. It's like $10 on Amazon. The last point that I had is actually very much in line with the other committee members' comments, which were priorities. Just to identify some priorities that I see, the 100th anniversary, since we're talking about that next month, I think that that's a priority. I believe in terms of this total work plan, we've talked about, I believe there's room in the budget in 2026-27 potentially for another study to update our assets or inventory because we've been using the Kaplan-Chen report for several years, which is not fully complete. So I think that before we can do anything like a walking tour or signage, we need to know what it is that we know. And I think that would include that report in a couple of years, but also community outreach. So I think perhaps one of the earliest things that we might want to begin with, and I don't know how this works with the city, how much a survey costs to do, but some sort of public engagement to find out what's important to city residents and hear directly from the city itself what people would like to see, what it is that they love historically about the city, and to use that information to guide the rest of the work that we do here in this work plan.
And that is typically a critical piece of a survey, is that outreach, determining where we survey first, how many assets or sites we're surveying, the consultant ends up surveying. It depends on what the scope and scale of the survey will determine how much it costs. I know that I think it was Palm Desert who just recently did a survey as well, and I think Rancho Mirage also did. Rancho Mirage has quite an extensive list of designated properties. I think it's around 50. I don't remember now, but a lot of residential property in the city. So, but both cities have done surveys, and they've been quite extensive and also quite expensive. But I think that was something that the city had anticipated, updating the asset list if it is incomplete or it's missing information. I think that's important for us because that does inform the work that this board does when an application does come forward. And it helps give you good information. You want to work with the best information that you can have available to you.
So to build on that point, There is budget in fiscal year 25-26 for that study. $100,000 was budgeted for the survey. That is an item that is identified as something that should be deferred until early 2026, really to ensure that we have revenues coming in as projected in the budget to ensure that our budget is stable. I think the city manager referred to that in the presentation to City Council through the budget adoption process as springs in the budget. These are one-time costs. They're discretionary expenditures. We intend to do the work, but we need to ensure that we have the revenue to support the work. So if we delay that until early 2026, that should give us some period of time where we can track the sales tax revenues over that period to ensure that we're on course with the projections in the budget. Now, that said, if that is a priority for the Historic Preservation Committee, work that can be done in anticipation of the release of an RFP for an update to the survey in 2026 is to start putting together the scope of work for that RFP. It's not to say we're going to release it sooner than that. We do need that feedback from council, but I think working with the committee to build the scope of work, to build the RFP, that would be a good work product. And as you've identified, that may be influential. It may inform additional work that you've identified in your work plan as well.
Cool. I'd be happy to help with that RFP development.
Thank you. And I'd like to just backtrack for a moment because I sort of glossed over Member Heckman's recommendations. There were two of them. One had to do with that platform, that community platform or communal platform, centralized. And then sort of a question about, is there any sort of lower hanging fruit in this work plan? Is there anything, I know we've talked about a lot of the different elements and what the values are to having the different goals, and I'll actually pull that slide back up, the different goals that are in the work plan. Is there anything that the board would like to, or the committee would like to agree on maybe tackling first, or making a priority, or low cost, low barrier, low entry, other than the August event, which is already underway? If you want to help me with that, you certainly can. But anything in addition to that? Oh, pardon me. This one. That's the full, kind of the full list of all of those options. Is there anything you would like more information on in order to kind of pick one or pick two? Any adjustments you'd like to make? I like to think of this as a dialogue, and the term living document always comes, but dynamic document. This is not a static document. A strategic plan isn't a static document, but it is sort of your strategic plan, but it will continue to evolve as opportunities arise, as funding shifts and changes, as new things rise up on the horizon. You will have the ability to add things, move things, shift things, reprioritize things. Keep that in mind. This is, as the director pointed out, this is your work plan.
I think one structural thing that maybe we could look at is creating sub-goals within each project goal. If something like number 3 is development of historic recognition process combined with process for preservation of city assets, maybe we can, and then under here Chuparosa Lane is mentioned. Chuparosa Lane is something that I'm particularly very interested in. So if maybe there's a way to create steps within the goals so that we can identify things. But Chuparosa Lane, just to throw out a particular thing, it's not low-hanging fruit. I think that's really high-hanging fruit, but that's something that I'm personally particularly interested in. As I said earlier, though, I think some of our other things about historic neighborhoods and recognition of historic sites in general, it would be prudent to do community outreach and survey before developing that. I don't think we know what we know yet. Or we know what we know, but we haven't done the due diligence and the homework. I wonder, or I think.
So if I can, I think we've heard some good feedback from the committee this afternoon. And this may be an opportunity for us to say, let's work on a couple of these elements. We've heard, interested in creating a subcommittee to continue working on the application itself. I think that's an item that we can be responsive. We have the 100-year centennial celebration that's coming up. That is an item that is going to require some additional work. And I think the idea of a landing page, we actually got a public records request just this week requesting a copy of that prior report. It's not on the city's website. We're missing opportunities to communicate and share relevant information. I think that's good feedback as well. And if there's consensus with the committee, we can look to create a landing page for historic preservation in the city and to share the work that has already been done and to communicate the work plan and the ideas that this group is continuing to work on. I think that's something that we can work on. And as well, we can start the discussion on the RFP for that survey. I think that's something that we can agendize, bring forward. We can share examples of what has been done in other communities and really catalyze that discussion. I think this is to your point that that's public outreach and communication. That's part of that survey process. And you need that document. You need the recommendations that are coming from that to build some of the other ideas that are in the work plan. So perhaps those are some of the action items coming from the discussion today that help guide and inform staff and find ways to move some of these items forward and to help create some momentum for the committee.
Yeah, a website that you mentioned there would be really, I think, low-hanging fruit that we could do something that would have an immediate impact. Or finding the application itself is pretty difficult, and having a more, I think that could be good. There's also, I think on the Public Arts website, there's a list of historic sites that you can walk around, and they're all town square, I think. I might be mistaken on that, but that's something that could be web-related that we could have.
There's a way for us to make that intentional.
Yeah.
And clearly, right now, it's not. It's scattershot. And
Yeah.
I think there's a way to improve that. That's good feedback from the committee. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Terrific.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, members. My name is Eric Besserell, and I am the Economic Development Manager for Cathedral City. So really excited to share this one with you all. This is something that typically, you hear about economic development and what that role plays in a community. And ultimately, whatever we touch, we're always part of that story and that history. And this opportunity came to my desk, and although kind of on the cusp of what is economic development, what is within the breadth of that, this is very much, I feel like, a part of everything that we do, and part of that storytelling that I think is so critical for every community to have. So in that, I'm going to talk about this application that we're looking at applying for a grant. So the 2025 California Cultural Districts Grant is overseen by the California Arts Council, which is overseen by the state of California. So this district designation is, there's an official application for each municipality to apply for. It is a pretty strenuous application, and so within this presentation, I'll touch on what that looks like, what we're hoping to achieve with that, and what are some of the next steps. So about the grant, the initiative is set up to select 10 new state-designated cultural districts. which expand the original cohort that was established in 2017. The cultural districts represents vibrant, creative communities across California, driving cultural, economic, and social vitality. The Cultural Arts District program was established through Assembly Bill 189. The California Arts Council and the authority identify, they designate and promote areas that are concentrated in these cultural areas or the activities that happen within them. At a minimum, there are various stakeholders that need to apply and be in a cohesive application to get the designation. So we are working with our grants analyst, Amanda, who is working on compiling the overall application, ensuring that we may qualify for this, and just the overall process. So about the California Arts Council, they're a state agency with a mission in strengthening arts, culture, and creative expression as tools to cultivate a better California for all. It supports local arts infrastructures and programming statewide through grants, initiatives, and services. California Arts Council envisions a California where all people flourish with universal access to and participation in the arts. So about the districts, I wanted to put a map up here so you all see where there have been designations. And then a little bit about those designations. Some of them a little bit outside the box, so you can kind of see about those. And if you go to their website, you can learn more about each one of those cultural districts. But as you can see, where that little sliver down there, Riverside County, there aren't any designated in Riverside County. So I wanted to take this opportunity to really highlight Cathedral City. Cathedral City is such a beautiful place that I feel that the rest of California should really know about and learn about. There's a lot of history here, a lot of hidden history that I think as you all are navigating the roles that you all play, it's really crucial. It's the way that we tell the story and the history. And I think the neatest thing about this is I always try to find these opportunities to learn something about how maybe we interpret things or how we look at things. And the California Arts Council, the way that they kind of broke it down is two different ways that we see culture. They see as culture producers, and then there's the heritage. So there's paying homage to what's already occurred, and then looking at who are the active players within that community that are creating more history, the artists, the various individuals. And we look at architecture in today's world much different than we looked at architecture, I think, historically. And that's another thing to really pay attention to is just the importance of the structures that are within our community. And maybe not in just one concentrated area, but this does require us to define some sort of outlier of a culture district. And so with that, we looked at the overall area and said, okay, what is it that we're trying to do? So as part of the process, we started diving into the history of it and accumulating the asset list that they require. So as part of this application, they require an asset list, which can include people, places, even cultural practices, such as annual events, things that are, again, either they're producing heritage or they're paying homage to that. So the draft of the Cultural Arts District, this is, again, very preliminary, but this is roughly what we're looking at, a general vicinity of what this looks like. And what we envision on doing with the grant funding if we were chosen. So one of the things that we're looking at is just looking at the basic connectivity of our downtown to our arts district is so crucial. And we have this amazing, beautiful bridge that really connects it all together. So I kind of highlighted it here. And it's one that I try to take staff on. It's one of the kind of the cooler things that I found out about working here. I frequent Mr. Zebra's and go to that side so much that having that connectivity, I think others as well, we need to use that and make that a connecting piece for us to continue telling our stories, but also create that walkability that we so much have, and it's already there. It's just kind of hidden, and let's elevate that, and maybe with $10,000 realistically, how far can that get you? We're going to do the best that we can to utilize those funds. Ultimately, it's how do we use that to better promote our community and our history. So these are just examples of what we're looking at. potentially, as we develop what these cultural assets look like, actually developing some walkability, and so people can actually, go and visit these. And as you mentioned, there's so many cultural places around our community. How do we create a vision where we can walk to these places and just pay homage to them? So the next steps is we have an application that is due on August 7th. Of course, I mentioned an asset list. This is when we've talked with the California Arts Council, this is something that is up to our community to sort of decide on and take a look at. Events sometimes aren't seen as cultural practices, but they made it pretty clear that those are. So if you have an event such as, let's say, our LGBT plus days, and we're paying homage to and paying respect to different sectors in our community, Taste of Jalisco, things like that, we want to highlight because those are very much part of our community and part of our culture. So our next steps are to continue with the application process that all of the staff has been so amazing on. This is maybe something where you all could potentially play a role in providing maybe even certain assets that you all think are valuable to our community. Ultimately, again, this isn't a historic designation, but they all play a role together. So, historical places, cultural practices, and people that play a role both historically and today. That's one thing that they want to know. Who's running the senior center? Who's doing these certain things? And they want to know those because those are all part of the story. So, the cohort, if chosen, the program would offer us $10,000 over a 2-year period. We would match those, that $10,000, so it'd come out to about $20,000 that would be allocated towards whatever the projects that got approved would be. And the cohort designation would run from January 1st, 2026 to December 31st, 2030. Currently, we are, again, working on the application, and we will be submitting it August 7th if all goes well. And with that, I leave you, you obviously have my information, and I would love to hear from each of you if you have something in mind that you think would be a neat place to highlight or to include in that list. I would love to hear from you all. So, but again, happy to answer any questions, and again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. I think it would be very helpful if you had descriptions or a definition of what you mean by cultural art.
That's a very good question. So I can get you all that definition of what they're looking for that asset list, and it can be people. They're pretty flexible with what they've been able to accept and look at, but it can be people, places, even events that occurred, so it may not have necessarily been a specific place, but an example would be like maybe Dunn Road, right? What they call the road to nowhere. So things like that they have a story, they have a history, but it may be just an event that occurred, but I'm happy to provide that list.
Yeah, I have a PhD in sociocultural anthropology, and I don't understand what you mean by a cultural asset, a cultural something. I mean, it has to have a good definition.
Yes, very good point. So in the staff report, I attached the Culture District's grant guidelines, and within that gives you a little bit more depth of what specifically they're looking for. In general, though, in the times that I've talked to them and asked for clarity, this seems to be somewhat of a flexible opinion in some cases, but people, places, and events is kind of the general term, but I do have specific definitions in the much larger guideline that I can pass along.
Thank you.
Yes.
I want to say I think that bridge is a great choice. I think that bridge is so important to connecting our arts district to our downtown district, and anything we can do to make it more exciting and pretty, I think it's a great thing to do. And a scavenger hunt sounds like a lot of fun as well.
Thank you. Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like we should clap.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are there any committee member comments?
Yes. I do believe, according to the municipal code, we're supposed to select a new chair and vice chair every year. I believe it's in July. I wanted to ask staff about that and if we're planning to do that this year.
We can agendize that for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other committee member comments? Would you like to chime in as your first meeting? Any thoughts?
Well, I'm very happy to be here, number one. I've learned a lot just listening to this discussion, so I look forward to more. And yeah, there's some really great ideas on the, or not ideas, there's some really great plans on the work plan. I look forward to being able to participate, to see them come to fruition, and just contribute to preserving the greatness that Cathedral City has.
Thank you. Thank you. Staff comments?
Date. I will be sending this out to everyone. This is a save the date for Historic Preservation Symposium. It's Thursday, September 18th, 12 to 1:30. This particular symposium is going to be held by Zoom. It is a historic preservation through the lens of agricultural history, regional growth, and architectural styles that make the Inland Empire unique. It is then followed up by an historic downtown walking tour and mixer, and that will be on Saturday, September 20th, looks like 9 to 2 p.m. Maybe one at 9 and one at 2. Redlands, California, that will be in. So you are certainly encouraged, and we can support board members who want to attend either or both of those events. But again, I will send that out. This was a save the date that was sent from the California Inland Empire APA to let us know that this was coming up. It will be here very soon, but as soon as I have more details, I will send those along.
I do have one other staff comment. And first off, I want to acknowledge and just say I appreciate and respect the discussion with the Historic Preservation Committee, particularly this evening. You know, this has been challenging to get to this point with getting committee members and really creating some momentum with the committee, but I do want to acknowledge the work plan and acknowledge the discussion that this committee has had the last few meetings, getting to the point where you are starting to develop action items and you are starting to look ahead and create a schedule for your future. And you know, I think in the absence of applications for historic designation, this is important. This is important in the sense of this is a way that the committee can ready itself, increase awareness, increase education, and even as it looks at the application process, ensure that you have the systems in place necessary to respond to historic preservation requests in the future. And as I reflect on that, I also have to think about the staff liaison and our ability to serve the Historic Preservation Committee. And tonight, Justin Gardner, our Code Compliance Manager, has been in attendance, observing, listening. He's had some opportunity to look at past meetings, past agendas. Justin will be stepping in as the staff manager, the liaison for the Historic Preservation Committee. And I think this is important in the sense that, well, I'll let him introduce himself here in a moment, but he is action-oriented. He is results-driven. And as you're starting to put together a work plan and looking to create results, you'll continue to be supported by Ms. Schultz. She's the subject matter expert supporting historic preservation, but having a manager who's able to readily review, respond to agenda packets, be able to support the committee in these meetings, I think that's important. and Justin will be stepping in as the liaison. I'll still be involved, working closely with him, working closely with Ms. Schultz on the Historic Preservation Committee agenda items, but it's my intent to ensure that the committee is adequately supported as it's moving ahead with its work plan in the future. So with that, I'll ask Mr. Gardner to introduce himself.
Thank you, Mr. Firestein, for the introduction. Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, thank you for your time tonight and having me on board for this meeting. Excited to be here. It's a new adventure and opportunity for me in my professional and personal growth. Although I don't have a strong background in history or preserving it, I do appreciate it, in particular anything military history as a United States Army veteran myself. That stuff excites me. I often find myself at the General Patton Museum out in Mountain Center, soaking in all that history and enjoying it because I think history is incredibly important to our community, especially in our society in whole. So having this opportunity to be here with you and help guide the process along, tackle difficult things, and move forward, I look forward to it. And I will be open and available at all times. I'll have my email address shared to the committee, so you can reach out anytime you need me.
Mr. Gardner also has a lengthy history here in Cathedral City as a native to Cathedral City.
I am. We moved out here in the early 90s with my parents. I went to Cathedral City High School. I bought my first home in Cathedral City and somehow managed to come back to work for the city. So I've been here for a little while, and I've enjoyed watching it grow. And having finally a opportunity to participate in preserving its history is pretty exciting.
It's great to have you. Thank you. So I know that was staff committees, but staff comments, but I would like to add one final thought, or one final comment. Without this present team that we have right now, and I'm talking about staff, I think the committee honestly would have been dead in the water. Previous people who held these positions were not really great proponents of this, and there was some pushback from city council. That was an uphill fight, and it was a big deal to finally get city council approval of even having the committee. So I just want to say thank you. Okay, and with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
No motion needed, Chair. We can just adjourn with the time.
We will adjourn at 6:19.